It was a bitterly cold morning in the heart of the city. The streets were alive with the sounds of traffic, hurried footsteps, and the chatter of people trying to escape the winter wind. Outside a small cafe, an old man sat on the pavement, wrapped in a worn-out blanket. His clothes were torn and dirty, his shoes had holes in them, and his beard had grown long and unkempt. His hands trembled as he held a paper cup, hoping someone would spare a few coins. Most people passed him by without a glance. Some looked away deliberately, as if ashamed to see him. Others smirked or whispered something cruel as they walked past. But he didn't seem to notice. He just stared at the ground, lost in his thoughts, whispering something under his breath every now and then, a prayer, perhaps, or a memory he couldn't let go of. Across the street, a group of college students had gathered. They were laughing loudly, taking selfies, sipping coffee, and enjoying their morning. One of them noticed the old man and nudged his friend. "Look at that guy," he said, chuckling. "He looks like he hasn't bathed in years." Another joined in, "Hey, maybe he's one of those rich guys pretending to be homeless." You never know. Their laughter grew louder. They began taking pictures, zooming in on the man's face, joking about how pathetic he looked. The old man heard the laughter, but he didn't raise his head. He was used to it. Every day, he endured the same mockery from strangers who didn't know his story. His eyes were tired, but behind them, there was a spark, a flicker of something that hadn't completely died out. A light breeze passed, carrying the smell of fresh coffee and rain. Suddenly, the students' laughter stopped as the sound of an expensive engine filled the air. A sleek black Mercedes slowly pulled up in front of the cafe. The doors opened, and a woman stepped out. She was elegant, graceful, and confident, the kind of woman who commanded attention without saying a word. Dressed in a perfectly tailored coat and high heels, she looked like she belonged in a magazine. Her presence turned heads immediately. Even the students straightened up, trying to guess who she was. The woman looked around briefly, then her eyes fell on the old man sitting on the pavement. Her expression changed instantly, from calm and composed to something softer, almost broken. Without hesitation, she walked across the street, her heels clicking on the cold pavement. People stopped to watch as she knelt down beside the old man. For a moment, no one spoke. The students exchanged puzzled glances, whispering among themselves. The old man lifted his head slowly, his eyes widening as he recognized her. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. His lips trembled as he whispered, "Emma." Tears welled up in the woman's eyes. "Dad," she said softly, her voice breaking. "I finally found you." The old man blinked, trying to make sense of it. His hands shook as he reached out to touch her face, as if afraid she might disappear. "Is it really you?" he asked. She nodded, her tears falling freely now. "It's me, Dad, it's really me." The crowd around them fell silent. Even the students, moments ago full of laughter, were frozen in place. They couldn't believe what they were seeing, the woman everyone admired, sitting on the dirty pavement beside the man they had mocked just moments ago. Emma wrapped her arms around her father tightly. "I searched for you everywhere," she whispered through tears. "After Mom died, you just disappeared. I didn't know where you went, I didn't know if you were alive." The old man's voice cracked as he spoke. "I couldn't face it, Emma. I lost everything, the house, the business, your mother. I didn't want you to see me like this. I thought it was better if you remembered me as I was." She shook her head, holding him even closer. "You're my father. I would have gone anywhere to find you. You didn't lose me, Dad. You never will." The people watching felt a heavy silence fall over the street. Some lowered their heads, ashamed of how they had judged the man without knowing his story. The same students who had mocked him minutes ago now looked away, their faces pale and guilty. Emma gently took her father's hand and helped him stand. "Come with me," she said softly. "You don't belong here anymore. Let's go home." He hesitated for a moment, glancing around nervously. I don't think I can. I've been here for so long. This is all I have left." She smiled through her tears. "No, Dad, you have me. That's enough." The students watched as she opened the door of her luxury car and helped her father inside. Before getting in, she turned toward them, her eyes red from crying but full of strength. "You laughed at him because you saw a man who looked broken," she said. "But I see the man who raised me, who worked day and night to give me a life, who taught me never to judge anyone by what they wear or where they sit. Maybe next time, look a little deeper." No one replied. The only sound was the quiet hum of the car as it drove away, leaving the crowd in stunned silence. Later that night, as snow began to fall, one of the students sat alone, thinking about what had happened. The image of the woman hugging the homeless man wouldn't leave his mind. He thought about how quick they had been to laugh, and how wrong they had been. He took out his phone, opened the picture he had taken that morning, and deleted it. Then he wrote something new on his social media. Don't judge someone by what you see. You never know the story behind their eyes. Meanwhile, Emma helped her father settle into her home. She gave him warm clothes, a proper meal, and a soft bed, the first he'd slept in for years. As he lay down, he whispered, "I don't deserve this." She smiled gently and kissed his forehead. "You deserve the world, Dad. You gave it to me once, now it's my turn." That night, the old man cried quietly, but for the first time in years, they were tears of peace, not pain. The world that had mocked him was behind him now. In its place was love, forgiveness, and the warmth of a daughter who never stopped believing. And outside, as the snow blanketed the city streets, the bench where he once sat stood empty, but it held the memory of a lesson everyone who saw that moment would never forget. The sun had barely risen, and the hospital gates were already buzzing with people. Nurses hurried in, doctors rushed past, and visitors carried flowers and food for their loved ones. Amid all this motion sat a man who seemed completely still, an old homeless man wrapped in a faded gray blanket. His hair was long, his face unshaven, and his hands rough and trembling from the cold. He sat in the same spot every morning, right beside the hospital's main entrance. Some people gave him a few coins, some ignored him completely, and others muttered insults under their breath. "Why does the hospital let him sit here?" One man complained. "He makes the place look bad," another added. But the old man didn't argue. He only smiled faintly, his tired eyes filled with patience, as if he understood their cruelty came from ignorance, not evil. Every afternoon, he would watch the children leave the hospital, some in wheelchairs, some holding their parents' hands, and his lips would move in a silent prayer for each one. No one knew his name. No one asked. To them, he was just another beggar. Until one day, a black Rolls-Royce glided to a stop in front of the hospital. The engine purred softly before falling silent. The door opened, and a woman stepped out, graceful, confident, and dressed in an elegant white suit. Her face was familiar to many. She was Mrs. Eleanor Raymond, the CEO of one of the biggest companies in the city, a woman who appeared in magazines, on TV, and at charity events. People whispered her name as she walked by. But instead of heading straight into the hospital, she looked around, and her eyes fell on the old man sitting by the gate. Everyone expected her to ignore him like the rest. Instead, she walked directly toward him. Without hesitation, she knelt down beside him and smiled warmly. "Hello again," she said softly. The old man blinked in surprise. Ma'am, you must have mistaken me for someone else." She shook her head gently. "No, I could never forget your face." The crowd around them began to murmur. Hospital staff peeked out through the glass doors, and security guards watched in confusion. The scene was something no one could make sense of, one of the wealthiest women in the city sitting beside a homeless man on the cold concrete ground. Eleanor placed her hand over his. "You don't remember me, do you?" The man frowned, trying to think. He had met many people at this hospital over the years, some kind, some cruel, but this woman's face stirred something deep in his memory. Her eyes, he had seen them before. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "My memory isn't what it used to be." She smiled sadly. "You saved my son's life 5 years ago." He looked at her in shock. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. She continued, her voice trembling, "My son, David, he was only 7 then. His liver failed suddenly. The doctors said he needed a transplant, but none of us were a match." She paused, her eyes filling with tears. "And then you came." Now it came rushing back. The child with pale skin and tired eyes. The desperate mother crying in the hallway. The doctor asking him if he was sure, if he truly wanted to give half of his liver to a boy he didn't know. He remembered saying yes without hesitation. He had no family, no possessions, and no future. But he still had his health, and to him, saving a child's life seemed like the only thing worth doing. "You remember, don't you?" Eleanor whispered. The old man nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. "I do. How is he?" She smiled through her tears. "He's alive, healthy, happy. He's in school right now. He wouldn't be here if not for you." The crowd that had gathered around them listened in silence. A few of the nurses wiped away tears. Even the Security guards looked down, ashamed of the times they had told the old man to move away from the hospital gate. Eleanor gently took the man's hand again. I searched for you, but you left the hospital before I could thank you. They said you didn't even give your real name. He smiled faintly. It wasn't important. I was just glad he lived. But it was important, she said, her voice firm. You gave up everything to save someone you didn't even know. You deserve to live with dignity, not like this. He shook his head, his voice soft but steady. I didn't do it for a reward. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Besides, I've lived my life. That boy has his whole life ahead of him. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind carried the sound of traffic, and the city moved on, but that little corner outside the hospital felt frozen in time. Then Eleanor did something that stunned everyone watching. She sat down fully beside him on the cold ground. The driver of her Rolls-Royce rushed forward, panicked, but she raised her hand to stop him. People whispered in disbelief. Some took photos, others just stood still, unsure what they were witnessing. Eleanor looked at the crowd and said clearly, "This man is not a beggar. He's not someone to be mocked or ignored. He is a hero, the man who saved my son's life." The words cut through the noise like a blade. The same people who had once ridiculed the old man now stood in silence, guilt heavy on their faces. Tears rolled down the old man's cheeks. He had lived invisible for so long, a forgotten soul in a busy world, and now, suddenly, he was seen again. Eleanor turned to him. "Come with me. I won't take no for an answer. I want you to live with us. You deserve warmth, food, and care, not this pavement." He hesitated. "I don't belong in your world." She smiled. "You belong wherever kindness lives. And my son, he's been waiting to meet his hero." For the first time in years, the old man's eyes lit up with something close to joy. Slowly, he stood up, supported by her arm. The crowd parted as they walked toward the car together. Before getting in, Eleanor looked back at the people still watching. "Remember," she said, "a person's worth isn't measured by their clothes or their money. It's measured by their heart." The Rolls-Royce door closed gently, and the car drove away, leaving behind a street full of people who would never forget what they had seen. Later that evening, at Eleanor's home, a young boy came running down the stairs. "Mom," he shouted, and then stopped in shock when he saw the old man standing beside her. "David," she said softly, "this is the man who saved your life." The boy's eyes widened. He walked up slowly and then threw his arms around the old man. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." The old man's hands trembled as he hugged him back. For the first time in many years, he felt warmth, not from a blanket or the sun, but from the love of a family that finally remembered him. And as he looked into the boy's smiling face, he realized something profound. He had once given half of his liver, but today, he had gotten back a whole heart. The city's financial district was always busy, filled with the sound of hurried footsteps, honking cars, and endless conversations about money, deals, and deadlines. In the middle of that chaos, one man sat quietly on a wooden bench every morning. His clothes were old, his hat torn at the brim, and his shoes scuffed from years of wear. Every day, he fed the pigeons from a small paper bag, smiling softly as they fluttered around him. He never asked for money, never spoke to anyone, just sat there, content in his silence. To the businessmen who passed by, he was invisible. Some sneered, others made jokes. "Must have made some bad investments," one would laugh. "Or maybe he never worked a day in his life," another added. They didn't know his name. They didn't care. To them, he was just another homeless man, a reminder of what failure looked like. But what they didn't know was that the man they mocked had once owned the very building they worked in. His name was Henry Adams, and years ago, he had been one of the richest men in the city, a self-made billionaire known for his kindness and vision. But when his wife passed away and his daughter moved abroad for her education, Henry's heart changed. Money no longer mattered. He had seen people chase wealth but lose their humanity in the process. He decided to give it all away, every company share, every property, every cent, to help those who needed it most. When the world found out, news outlets called him the billionaire who gave it all up. But soon, the news faded, and the world forgot. Henry disappeared from the public eye, choosing a simple life among the very people he once wrote checks for. One sunny afternoon, a group of businessmen gathered near the bench again, sipping their coffee and exchanging gossip. As usual, the old man was there, surrounded by pigeons. "Unbelievable," one of them said mockingly. Imagine wasting your life like that. Doesn't he have anything better to do? Just then, the sound of an expensive car engine echoed down the street. A sleek black limousine pulled up in front of the office building. The men turned, curious. The driver stepped out and opened the door. A woman in a sharp designer suit emerged, confident, graceful, and powerful. Every eye turned toward her. They recognized her instantly, Emma Adams, the newly appointed CEO of Adams Global Foundation. She was one of the youngest and most successful executives in the country, known for her intelligence and compassion. The businessmen straightened their ties, hoping to look professional as she walked toward the building. But then, something unexpected happened. Instead of heading for the glass doors of her office, Emma stopped halfway, and turned toward the old man on the bench. Their eyes widened as she smiled warmly and walked right up to him. Without hesitation, she sat beside him. "Good afternoon, Mr. Adams," she said softly. "Are you ready to visit the foundation today?" The crowd froze. The laughter, the chatter, everything stopped. Mr. Adams looked up, his wrinkled face breaking into a gentle smile. "Always, my dear," he replied, his voice calm and full of warmth. "Do you think they're taking good care of the children?" Emma nodded, her eyes softening. "Better than ever. We just opened a new shelter in your name. The kids are waiting to see you." The businessmen looked at one another, pale and speechless. "Wait," one whispered, "Mr. Adams, as in Henry Adams." Another swallowed hard. "The billionaire who gave away his fortune." Their words faded into silence as they realized who had been sitting before them all this time. The man they had ridiculed for years was the founder of the very company that paid their salaries. Emma stood and offered her hand to her. "Father, let's go, Dad. It's time to meet your family, the one you built with love, not money." Henry rose slowly, taking her hand. He turned to the crowd and smiled gently. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. I trust business is good." No one dared to respond. Shame hung heavy in the air. Henry looked around and added softly, "I used to think success was measured by the size of your office or the cars you drive. But now, I know, it's measured by how many lives you touch, how much kindness you leave behind." Then he walked toward the limousine with his daughter. The driver opened the door, and as Henry got in, he looked back at the bench where he'd spent so many quiet mornings. For him, that bench wasn't just wood and metal, it was a place of peace, a reminder that true happiness doesn't come from power or possessions but from simplicity and love. Later that day, at the Adams Global Foundation, dozens of children gathered in a bright garden filled with laughter and sunlight. Henry walked among them, handing out bread to feed the birds. The kids hugged him, calling him Grandpa Henry. Emma watched from a distance, tears glistening in her eyes. She had built her success on her father's values, compassion, humility, and generosity. One of the children asked him, "Grandpa Henry, why do you always smile?" He chuckled softly, "Because I spent too many years chasing things that didn't matter. Now, I smile because I've finally found what does, people like you." That night, as the sun set over the city, a janitor cleaning the office building noticed something on the bench outside, a note pinned under a small bag of birdseed. It read, "Greater than, to anyone who sits here. Once, I thought wealth was everything. Then I lost it all and found peace. Feed the birds, and remember, kindness is the only currency that never loses its value. H. Adams." The janitor smiled and whispered, "Rest well, old man." The next morning, the bench was empty. Henry Adams had passed away peacefully in his sleep, a faint smile on his face. But his legacy lived on, in every meal served at the foundation, every child given a home, and every life touched by his quiet generosity. And from that day on, no one ever laughed at a homeless man again, because they finally understood that behind every worn coat and tired smile might be a soul richer than any millionaire.